All right, we are back. What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Cody and Derek, back for another one, guys. And today we are continuing in our series looking at the position groups for the Indianapolis Colts, breaking them down. We are finishing off the offensive side of things with the offensive line. We've talked about quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and we are wrapping up the offensive side of things today. So we're going to hop right into that in just a second. But before we do that, just want to let you guys know that this episode is presented by Prize Picks. So be sure to go hop over to prizepicks.com today or use their mobile app and sign up using the code BTJ for a $100 deposit match. All right, Derek, let's talk about this offensive line. Really a unit, when you look at it, very, very deep, very, very talented group, and probably one of the better ones in the NFL if we're being honest with each other. But there are a few questions and a few things to talk about when it comes to this group, and some things looking at maybe even in 2025 and moving forward with this group that are interesting. Now, I will say, Derek, probably out of maybe despite a few positions, I mean, out of the positions that have, an actual group, like where there's multiple players playing as a collective unit, this is probably the one, Derek, that we would say we're pretty confident that we know who all the starters are going to be, at least from day one. We feel pretty confident with this offensive line. But before we dive into some of these players individually, talk to me about this offensive line and kind of their outlook here in 2024.
Well, it was definitely a great resurgence in 2023. In 2022, we saw that offensive line. It was terrible. There was really, and it's what's sad too, is there was really only about maybe one or two positions in that unit that were just that didn't play well, and the rest of the guys just seemed to follow suit. It was just not a great performance that year. But then in 2023, the O line got healthy and we figured out the unit and who all needs to be in it. And then, of course, when you brought in Tony Sperano Jr., the team started to get a lot more efficient and they got a lot more physical. And it resulted in the Indianapolis Colts O-line returning to being the Indianapolis Colts O-line that we're used to seeing. And as you said, we pretty much know who the top starting five are at this point. But it definitely is a really overall great unit. And it's going to help the Indianapolis Colts big time this year.
Yeah, and the Colts have two guys that are entering contract years. That's center Ryan Kelly and right guard Will Fries. So that's just something of note looking forward to next year. Kind of what will those positions hold in terms of the future? Will those guys be retained or will the Colts look to go elsewhere? We'll have to see. But I figured we could start by talking about the outside guys, the tackles, and then move inside and finish with the centers today. So when you look at the offensive tackles for the Indianapolis Colts, Derek, they have a lot of depth. There's a lot of guys here that are going to be competing for this offensive tackle position. Obviously, we know the left tackle is going to be Bernhard Raimann, a breakout year from him in 2023 after an up-and-down rookie season in 2022. Right tackle, of course, Braden Smith, who dealt with his fair share of injuries, probably for the first time, missed a good chunk of the season due to some of these injuries. Still tried to play through it, but ultimately he couldn't physically be on the field. It was just a big bummer to miss him for all that time. But in the glimpses that we saw those two together, Derek, they were absolutely one of the best pairs, I should say, when it comes to tackles in the NFL. I mean, Raimann played like a top 15 tackle, and Braden Smith, when he's been healthy, I've always thought he's been very massively underrated.
Yeah.
And I think he's one of the better right tackles in football when he's on the field. So let's just talk about the starters real quick. What did you see and what did you like to see from the tackles in 2024 from the two starters?
Yeah, Bernhard Raimann, I mean, talk about the freaking job he's done, right? Comes in as a third-round tackle, not really expected to come in right away and do that much, but he had to step up last year, especially when, there was doubts about who should be the left tackle of the future for the Indianapolis Colts. He came in He put on a lot of muscle and made himself a little bigger. And so he was able to withstand more of those bull rushes. And, Bernard Ryman now, like you said, he's a top, I mean, you could argue he's a top 10 left tackle in the league now. He's definitely a above average left tackle right now, for sure. And that's exactly what you need, protecting Anthony Richardson. And like you said, with Braden Smith, the biggest issue has been sometimes the inconsistency with the injuries. I know in 2022, he did not miss a lot of games. I think it was 2021 when he had an issue, or it might have been 2020. And then in 2023, obviously this last year, had to miss quite a few games, just never really seemed to get healthy. So, there's been inconsistencies with staying healthy from Braden Smith, but you're absolutely right. When he is healthy, he is one of the best right tackles in all of football, and I would not move away from that statement for the life of me. He is a fantastic player, and some people just don't want to look beyond that because they get mad at him for the injuries, but it's why they keep paying him, and that's why they keep him around, because they know that despite the injuries, he's worth every penny that you're paying him. So he's worth that. He's that good. So, yeah, to have your right tackle and your left tackle figured out is truly a blessing, to be able to hold those edges and keep your quarterback in the loop.
Yep. So those are the two starters there, but then you have some pretty decent depth and a lot of young depth I'll add as well when it comes to it, but a lot of potential certainly behind him. You got to talk about Blake Freeland, who stepped up last year in place of Braden Smith at right tackle and had some up and down moments. Wasn't a great year for Blake Freeland, but he did kind of get thrown in there and kind of had to figure it out. So similar to Bernard Ryman, I think he's on that same path where he's a very, very athletic tackle, a little bit undersized, needs to gain a little bit of muscle. So hopefully he's done that this offseason and gained 5, 10, even 15 pounds of muscle and really can kind of build out his frame a little bit and be able to handle a little bit more, like you mentioned with Ryman, some of those bull rushers, those bigger, pass rushers on the edge. Hopefully that'll help him out. And I think just having a year under his belt, having some real game time experience, as much as it sucked to have Braden Smith miss time last year, that might have been a really good thing for a guy like Blake Freeland because he got opportunities. Yes, he made plenty of mistakes. He wasn't great at times, but he had moments where he did play well. So he can build off of that here. And I think as probably your swing tackle right now, you feel pretty good about having a guy like Blake Freeland, who still, mind you, is only entering year 2. Having him there as a guy that's only going to get better as a tackle as he kind of gets into the league a little bit more and continues to grow into his body and get a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. Talk to me about Blake Freeland here and what you saw from him last year and what you're thinking he can potentially do here in 2024.
Well, I would say this. I think it's a little unfair for me to critique him too harshly because, again, Blake Freeland was brought in never to be playing as a tackle for the first year. He was brought in as a depth piece, had to unfortunately play quite a bit due to both Bernard Ryman and Braden Smith missing several weeks this last year. And man, he got picked on. He got picked on and picked on and picked on, especially in that Cleveland game. Whoo, boy, that was bad. Myles Garrett was having the time of his life going up against Blake Freeland. And like I said, guys, I don't want to critique him too harshly. He clearly was not ready for the NFL last year. And, that's fine. Not everybody comes in right away as a rookie and knows what the heck they're doing. The Colts got lucky with Bernard Ryman knowing what the heck he was doing when he got into the league, and with the right training, he figured it out. But Blake Freeland had a lot more issues because there was a lot more flaws in his game, and he also faced premium competition. So that's the main thing. I think that a lot of times Blake Freeland got exposed because he was facing the likes of Aaron Donald, Myles Garrett, and a few other people as well. So, like I said, he at his worst moments he was really bad, but then again he was facing the best that the league could offer, and for a guy that's just coming into his own, that's a tough ask for anyone. So I think that this year is a great testing year for him to see if he's going to be better. Now, obviously, I mean, knock on wood, there's going to probably be some injuries on the O line at some point, particularly on the tackle side. It's almost, you have to think it's going to happen. Hopefully, this year, when and if that happens, Blake Freeland will have been able to have the year to do better, get stronger, get more understanding of these players, and maybe hopefully have a better season this next year. Maybe not lose as many blocks, and be more of a serviceable tackle. So all in all, last year I know it was not a good year. And a lot of people are praying that they never see Blake Freeland on the field again. But like I said, it was his first time in the NFL. He faced the best of the best last year because he was the weakest link. I don't blame him completely for how that season went down. So this year, we'll see what he's got.
And to be fair to Blake Freeland, it's not like Bernard Ryman when he had to play. It's not like he was lighting the world on fire either.
Right.
I do think Bernard Ryman, to your point, he did show more positive signs in his rookie year, but if you remember that Denver game, that was bad for Bernard Ryman. So every young tackle goes through it. So I'm not, willing to say, I don't ever want to see Blake Freeland on the field again because, he's got all the tools, Derek, to be a really good tackle in this league. He really does. And this is kind of the model the Colts have done with their tackles over the last number of years is like they've gotten these guys that are a little bit undersized, a little bit like weak in their game, like they need to gain some muscle, but they're athletic and they have the capability to get bigger and get stronger. And so I believe Blake Freeland also has that capability. And I think playing with a guy like, having some guys there that can really teach him and having a clear model, seeing what happened with Bernard Ryman and the leap he took from only one season, like that leads me to believe that it's possible for Blake Freeland as well. And so I think he's definitely going to be a guy that's going to get better as he gets stronger, as he develops his game. And now that he, like you said, he faced some really hard competition. But I think that honestly, Derek, that was probably one of his best moments, even though in the moment it sucked because you're like, man, he's getting destroyed. I think that was really good just for him to understand that's what I got to do. That's who I got to block. Like, and just being able to kind of learn from that because what do they say, right? Failure is the best teacher, right? So having those moments where he clearly failed and he messed up and he made mistakes, I think that's only going to serve to help him in the long run. He seems like a kid with his head on his shoulders, and he's got a good, I think he's got a good system and a lot of good guys in there and a good coach that's going to coach him up well. So I do think that Blake Freeland has an opportunity here, and I think he's going to be better in 2024. I just think he will naturally with kind of the way the Colts do it with their strength and conditioning and the guys that we've seen. They've had a model of success before. So I think it's a possibility here that Blake Freeland takes some sort of step here in 2024 in the right direction. But moving on to the other tackles the Colts have, of course, you got to talk about Matt Gonzalez, the guy the Colts took here in this draft in 2024, the tackle / guard, however you want to categorize him, out of Pittsburgh. He's 6'6", 320 pounds, so certainly has the size. Wasn't necessarily kind of a prototypical Bernard Ryman, Blake Freeland type of guy, but regardless of where he does play, if it is inside, if it is outside, this dude loves football, and I'm really excited to see him on the field. I think he's a guy that really fits in well here with the Colts and their offensive line.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to definitely be interesting as well what the Colts have him doing. Will they keep him at tackle? Will they move him inside? We've heard the likelihood of, we even talked about it when he was drafted, Cody. Could Gonzalez end up being the right guard of the future for the Indianapolis Colts? It's a very interesting situation for you because, like you said, Gonzalez, when you look at him, he looks like a very football guy. Everything about him just spews football. So it will definitely be interesting to see if they move him interior or if they keep him outside because and especially because if you want to potentially put him in as a starter at some point, that left tackle position ain't going to be somewhere where he's going to where that's going to thrive, right? Most likely he's going to have to get his shot on the right side where, he spent the back half of his career at Pitt on that side. So I would think that on that right side is most likely where he's going to get a chance. Is it behind Will Fries for now? And, maybe he takes over for him or, at some point when Braden Smith is Braden Smith going to ask for too much the next time around and they just want to have Gonzalez be the right tackle in the future? I don't know, but it definitely is going to be fun to see if where he goes through training camp and see where does he best fit on this team. Because I think there's a lot of great opportunities with him.
Yep, for sure. I'll be interested as well for that. But all right, last guy I want to talk about are the tackles. A guy we didn't see last year, but very athletic guy as well. I'm just excited to see him overall because he is just a freak of an athlete. Jake Witt, the offensive tackle, last year obviously dealt with a season-ending injury, but a small school guy. We've seen Chris Ballard do this before, Derek, with small school guys, where he takes a chance on him in the later rounds, and they've paid off sometimes, and sometimes they haven't. But Jake Witt, a guy that very much screams like a Chris Ballard type of pick, right? So what can he provide? Can he do anything? Or is he more of a practice squad guy? Is he just going to continue to be a practice squad guy his entire career? Or is there something more there with Jake Witt? I'm just intrigued to see him.
Oh, yeah. It's going to definitely be fun to see because, like you said, he had that injury and with what a lot of the 2023 draft class had to deal with was that as well. So it will definitely be interesting to see if he has any shot of getting any kind of snaps this year because, you brought in a bunch more offensive linemen. So how does Jake Witt fit into that? That'll be interesting. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Summer's here, so that means NBA, football, all those types of stuff. It's not here right now. So we got the MLB and the WNBA to pass the time. I haven't really gotten a whole lot into the WNBA as of recently, but have had a couple things here. A lot of Asia Wilson props here that are really good that I'm very interested in making. So I would definitely keep an eye out for any of those. Shohei Ohtani for MLB props. Highly suggest you guys hit that over when it comes to Ohtani, when it comes to total bases. Anytime you can get a chance to get Ohtani, especially even with just a 1.5 or 2 total bases, definitely want to try and take advantage of those. Because all it takes is one good hit from Shohei Ohtani to get you above that number. So definitely would encourage you guys do that. Be sure to download the app today and use code BTJ for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today and use code BTJ for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, it's sponsored by Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Well, let's move inside now to the guards for the Indianapolis Colts. We know, at least right now, the 2 starting guards from last year, Quentin Nelson and Will Fries at right side. But there are some other guys as well, Derek, with this offensive line in the interior. A guy by the name of Tanner Bortolini, who the Indianapolis Colts took, Could he factor into guard? Could he factor into center? We're not entirely sure what he's going to play and what he's going to do. But when it comes to the guard position, Derek, it's kind of a very intriguing position because you know your starters, but then you got a couple other guys like Josh Sills, for example. He played a little bit last year. And again, this also probably comes back to where does, Gonzalez play? And obviously, like I mentioned, where does Bordolini play? But when you look at this interior, Derek, on the guard position specifically, you have a few guys here that could potentially factor in. What is your opinion on the guards for the Colts?
Again, it's a solid group. I mean, particularly Quentin Nelson, no doubt, is in a really great spot. Quentin Nelson, one of the best guards, if not the best guard in all of football. And Will Fries, you and I talk about him all the time. He's an average right guard in the NFL. And when your weakest link is an average right guard in the NFL, you have a really great offensive line working for you. The depth is a little bit concerning when it comes to the guards positions. Tanner Bordolini could potentially be one of those guards of the future. But outside of that, you don't really have a lot of other options. The best other option you have in this moment is Danny Pinter. And most people would tell you Danny Pinter is not very serviceable at guard. So, yeah, I really like the starters for the Indianapolis Colts when it comes to that. But if you, as the Colts, if you're only keeping Gonzalez as a tackle, then that definitely concerns me with having no depth at guard right now. Because even if Bordolini is your backup guard of the future, he wasn't much of a guard at Wisconsin. He was primarily a center. So I don't know how his position flexibility will be, especially since he's no bigger than Danny Pinter. So it definitely will be a slight concern if Will Fries or Quentin Nelson has issues. Hopefully, somebody will be able to fill those roles, because right now I don't really see it.
Derek, I don't know if I agree with what you said about Bordolini. He played 8. He had 8 starts at guard. I know he had center was primarily, but he had 8 starts at guard, at left guard, I should say, and 3 at right guard. So, I mean, the dude can play guard. I don't think that's a question mark for me. Like, he can play some guard. He played at Wisconsin, but primarily center would be obviously the biggest position for him. So I guess I'm not as concerned because you have him. You mentioned Danny Pinter, who, again, he's a depth guy, so you're hoping that he's probably not even going to play. And then, I think there is also the question about when it comes, like we talked about with Gonzalez. But I see what you're saying when it comes to if those guys are strictly at center and tackle, then yes, you might have an issue. But I think there's some guys with some position flexibility. So I guess I'm not probably as concerned because I'm like, I think you could plug any of these guys in, feel pretty good about it. I mean, could you even plug in Wesley French as a guard? Like, could he play some guard? He probably could. So I'm not as concerned probably when it comes to the guards, but I think Tanner Bordolini would probably be the next guy up right now for me since he does have some experience at guard. But I think him or Gonzalez I'd be totally fine with at that backup guy. But I think you have some options there if you're the Colts, and I'm sure they want to get the best 5 out there. So if it's Bordolini, if it's Gonzalez, heck, if it's Danny Pinter, whatever they got to do, I'm totally okay with it for the guards. Now, moving to the center. We talked about Bordolini, talked about Wesley French. Ryan Kelly's coming back again. Had a really nice bounce back year last year, Derek, for the Colts, and in a contract year. But what does the future hold for Ryan Kelly with the Colts? That's a big question for next year.
Yeah, that's going to be the big question mark, is how much longer is Ryan Kelly going to be sticking around?
Yeah.
And it's funny too, because, he talks about it a lot that, he hates the narrative that, first it was the trade narrative. Now it's the retirement narrative, and he doesn't like either. But at the same time, we could also sit back and say, we're not 100% sure that we don't know definitively when it comes to Ryan Kelly how much longer he actually wants to play, because he does have a few injuries that he deals with throughout the years. He's had a couple concussions, and he just had himself a kid, so it's kind of in a situation where maybe he does want to maybe call it quits a tiny bit sooner. And but at the same time, he also did say that he would welcome another contract with the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, what does that actually mean? Does that mean a 1-year deal? Does that mean a 2-year deal? I mean, Ryan Kelly, when he is on the field, Cody, I mean, we said the same thing about Braden Smith. But with Ryan Kelly, he's a top 5 center in the league when he's healthy, easily. So, I mean, there's a lot to like about it. I just really hope that we can keep him around for a couple more years. I would hate to have to lose him after this year and then to, have to have Bortolini or Wesley French or have to draft a center in the draft next year, just because, you want to keep your best players around. So in 2024, I have no doubts. As long as Ryan Kelly remains healthy, he's going to do his job. He's going to be really good. I have no concerns about it. The more main concern about Ryan Kelly is just about how much longer he's actually going to remain the center for this team.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is he's only 31, so he's not like this aging center. Like he's a little older, but he's not that much older. He's only drafted in 2016, so it's not like this crazy, or maybe it was 2015, I don't know. But still, like, it hasn't been like he's been in the league for 14, 15 years. He's Jason Kelsey, where he's literally like mid-30s. Like, he's still got, I think, a good number of years. But again, it does come back to that health. And you are paying Ryan Kelly a good amount to be your center. And when he's on the field, he certainly earns it. But that's kind of been the trouble. Are you willing to pay a guy like that if he's probably not going to play a couple games per year? And so that's kind of the biggest question mark. And, potentially you've drafted your center of the future in Tanner Bortolini. I know there's been certain people that say he's the best center out of this draft. So I don't know what the future's going to hold for Ryan Kelly, but I think there's an opportunity here for Ryan Kelly to prove he deserves another contract with the Colts, and it starts with staying healthy.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right, let's talk about a few other guys here. We already mentioned them, but we better just talk about them real quick one more time. Wesley French, who I thought played very well, even though PFF wouldn't agree. I don't care. I thought Wesley French, from the eye test, played in pretty admirably, I think, honestly, last year with Ryan Kelly going down and Danny Pinter going out for the season. Wesley French, I thought, provided some pretty good depth there at center for the Colts, and the Colts didn't miss. Like we've seen whenever Ryan Kelly's been out in the past, how the Colts have just completely fallen apart at center. But I thought Wesley French played some quality minutes last year for the Colts, and I thought played pretty well, all things considered. And then you got Danny Pinter, who obviously we know he's filled in as well and played well at center. So what are your thoughts on these two backup guys right now?
Yeah, I mean, Wesley French, I have no concerns with Wesley French. He's a great backup center. Danny Pinter, again, another guy that last year had a season-ending injury before it got started. And my gosh, Cody, to think of just like how many guys last year had that, right? I mean, it feels like every unit we go into, there was at least one guy that had that happen. So I hate it. But, Danny Pinter, he can definitely be serviceable. I didn't love what I saw from him in a few different ways at guard, but as serviceable, he definitely can be when he needs to be.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. We already talked about Bortolini, who could be that center of the future. Obviously, we know one of the most athletic centers, I think the most athletic center we've seen coming out of the draft. So, I mean, he's got a lot of those things you like, but you're totally fine with him sitting back a year or two and learning behind Ryan Kelly and some of these guys and potentially filling in, when needed. But, I mean, I just feel like right now, man, in the interior especially, when it comes to center and even guard, if you want to say Bortolini and some of these other guys can play guard, like you've got a ton of depth in that interior. I feel like this offensive line, Chris Ballard learned his lesson in 2022 about the depth. And the Colts have had depth on depth on depth now, especially this season. it's kind of crazy how much depth they have, where you're like, you legitimately could have like a second unit, like the defensive line. It's kind of, which we'll talk about, but like both the lines, I think this is probably the deepest we can say that both of the lines for the Colts are in the Chris Ballard era. I really do believe that. They are so deep in so many different ways. Guys that can play and fill in, and you still feel like your offense can function, which is something we've certainly seen the Colts not have in the past.
Yep, absolutely. It's been, and you know what? Ballard also bet on this unit to get better from 2022 to 2023. And a lot of us were wondering if we should believe that. And, he ended up being right. Will Fries got better. Bernard Ryman got better. And, you had a few guys that, could get you a few snaps here and there to fill in. So, no doubt, the offensive line took a really good turn, and without a lot of major differences in the actual roster itself. But now you also brought in some couple good depth pieces to add to the mix. So I definitely think that this is a unit that now is going to continue to prosper with the units that we have now.
Yep. So, guys, let us know your thoughts on the offensive line for the Indianapolis Colts. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to smash that like button, hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, all that good stuff. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. And as always, go Colts.